All right, welcome everyone to the Transportation Commission meeting on May 12th. I'm calling this meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. Jennifer, could you please do the roll call?
Skylar's here. Mark?
Here.
Andy?
Here.
Brett?
Here.
And Brooke.
Here.
And Nick is not here tonight.
Okay, I am seeking motion to approve tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next is brief announcements from staff, commissioners, and council liaisons. This is a time for brief announcements from city staff, commissioners, and our council member liaison. Councilmember Deos? Do any of the commissioners have any announcements at this time?
I have a couple announcements. So first, my usual update on YOLO TD. Our Citizens Advisory Committee had a meeting last week on Monday. Folks here might be interested in their YOLO Active Transportation Corridors project, which is proceeding. That's a project that will construct. It's planning of several inner city off-road bike paths here in Yolo County, and we voted to recommend that two segments be prioritized to advance to the design phase. One of those would connect Davis to Woodland, would be adjacent to Road 102 up to 27, and then Harry Lorenzo Avenue, just like connecting the east side of Davis to Woodland was the preferred segment. And then the other one is connects up in the northern part of the county, connecting Madison to Esparto along Highway 16. So that's an update there. And then my other announcement is that I'll actually be moving out of Davis next month. I'm taking a new position with Transportation Management and Design. They're a transit planning consulting firm. Actually the contractor doing the short-range transit plan here in Davis, as well as for YOLO Bus. So due to that, this will be my last meeting tonight. So it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed serving with you all on both this commission and the predecessor BTSSC and UAC. I've really learned a lot from both staff and my fellow commissioners, and hope to stay in touch. I mean, it could well be possible, given that I don't know which projects I'll be working on yet. But if I do some work related to the Davis or Yolo County plans, maybe I'll be interacting with you all in that capacity, which would be a pleasure. But if not, potentially on other projects or efforts in the future. So it's been a pleasure working with you all. And also due to that, there are, in my seat as well as there's been another open seat on the Citizens Advisory Committee for YOLO Bus. So I would encourage anyone here, if you're willing to go up to Woodland every couple of months, to apply for that, because that's fulfilling work there as well. So there's a lot of interesting things going on at YOLO TD right now. So good time to be involved. I think it's been a pleasure working with and learning from you all.
Yeah, same Andy. We're going to miss you. Thank you for all your service on the commission.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Really appreciate having you on here and all your insight into transit issues. It's been great having you here for that.
Thank you.
Are there any other commissioner announcements? Do we have any announcements from staff?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of things. The first one, I wanted to let everyone know that there's a sensor project going on in conjunction with the university, 3rd and B. The university is evaluating sensor packages that are supposed to help detect bicycles and pedestrians at the intersection and measuring their effectiveness so that we can determine what should be used on future projects. Work is being sponsored by Caltrans for that one. Last weekend we had Loopalooza. Oh, it's actually on May 3rd, excuse me. It was a very well attended event this year. We had over 300 participants and it seemed to be well received by everyone. The only comment was there was a little bit of wind. The Bike Month proclamation will be at the City Council tomorrow. If anyone is interested, that will be at the first part of the agenda. While we're talking about the council, the 5th and IJK project that we had discussed at the last meeting is also going to be on the council's agenda. It's actually going to be a timed item in the middle of the council meeting. And in response to the commission's request for additional before and after data, when I came over to this meeting, there are loops installed on Fifth Street right now, houses to collect that data, so we have it for the before account. We did hurry that up a little bit so we could collect good data while schools were still in session. And that's why that is happening now. On Monday, next Monday, there's going to be a public meeting for the Russell and Arlington Roundabout, where we're going to solicit input from the community about design features and options. I'm also going to have a station there to talk about some quick build projects in advance of the roundabout to address some citizen requests we've received. That will be at the senior center, and I believe it starts at 6 p.m. And then the bike rodeos have been completed for 7 schools over the course of the spring. Unfortunately, we could not get something scheduled for Bullitt, but that will be picked up in the fall. And we completed that as part of the active transportation program. That's my update.
And I have an update. We have a bike scavenger hunt on May 31st. It's called Creature Quest. It's free. We're gonna have 2 groups competing, like family-friendly group and faster racer group. So I encourage all of you to come out. And I have 2 posters, so if you want to take them and put them up wherever you're going, please do so. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to open up the meeting for public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission on matters which are not listed on this agenda or are listed on the consent calendar. Speakers will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked to speak at the podium, and please state their name for the record. Is there any public comment at this time? Okay, if there is no scheduled public comment, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are non-controversial and can be approved with one motion. Before I ask for a motion, I do have one update to the April minutes. Under item D on the update on the annual speed hump program, the commenter was Vicky Montera, V-I-K-I, not Nikki. Her name's listed a couple times there, but yeah, it's Vicky. And I think as part of her comment, she also was asking for, she wanted monitoring of traffic and potential speed humps. So, and I know that the neighborhood's currently working on that, but yeah, mainly correcting her name. Are there any other corrections to the minutes or before we approve? Okay, with that, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar? So moved. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, next are our regular agenda items. These items will receive a presentation, and commissioners will have a chance to ask clarifying questions about the presentation and the staff report. Please hold all comments and discussion until after we hear public comment. Commissioners must be open to new ideas and listen to public comment. After the public comment, we can then discuss the item and provide our comments. I'm going to hand it off now to Jennifer Ryan to introduce our first regular item.
Great. So tonight we have students from Davis Senior High who are going to be presenting on a traffic issue that they have brought to the commission. So I'm going to invite them over to the podium to do their presentation.
Okay. Hi everyone. So for our RSJ research project, which is a history class at Davis High School, we asked from a transportation perspective, what is stopping students from getting to school on time? And not everyone from our group could make it, but I'm Madeline Scholl.
I'm Eliana Augustine.
And then I'm Corey Cohen.
So we asked, centered on issues regarding Davis High School and the city when it came to students getting to school on time. And this is an issue that affects North Davis Elementary, it affects the library, it affects St. James, it affects a ton of areas. And our group asked students at Davis High via a Google Forms survey where we asked the following: how they get to school and what they thought was stopping them from getting to school. And for the ones where they talked about what they thought was stopping them, it was a quantitative analysis question and they just typed it in. And a lot of examples for our qualitative data which was the typing in, was traffic or something along the lines of that. And we received a total of 296 responses, and we got approximately 30% from each grade. And we focused primarily on those who drive because we got 203 responses for drivers, and they were late the most often. So if you look at the slides, you can see that over half of the students who get rides to school were late to their first period at least once a week. I think it's about 55%. 97% of Davis High students think that Davis High has a traffic problem in the morning. And a lot of them also struggle to find parking with, again, I think over half,
I think it was
47% struggle to find parking, illustrating just how big of an issue this was. And this hinted to us that a likely cause of tardiness is students struggling to find parking, which creates more traffic and allows students to spend less time in class, which decreases the amount they learn and can affect their grades.
So our proposed solution is, the problem that you see on the board is that all those yellow lines are permits that you need to park there. I know a lot of us know somebody at the school that's gotten a ticket for parking in these spots because they physically cannot find a parking spot at the school because of getting there a little bit later or having a free first period. And those tickets are $50. They're not inconsequential to a student who's at school for most of their time. So we were thinking that having a discount on these permits or removing them entirely could be beneficial to the students and increase learning and decrease student expenses just for trying to make it to school on time.
And that's all, so if you have any questions.
Great, thank you very much for the presentation. Do commissioners have any clarifying questions? Students?
You guys could stay up here, though,
Yeah.
and ask you questions.
Okay.
Do we want to just wait for public comment and then jump into all of our questions rather than split it into?
I think that would be fine. So after that, then we'll follow. Is there any public comment on the presentation?
Comment as always, Trish Price from Bike Davis, and I just want to point out that being dropped off or driving yourself to school is not the only way to get to school. You can walk, you can bike, you can take the bus, and it seems like those might be better options than driving. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on the presentation? If there's no public comment, I'll open it up to discussion by commissioners. Mark?
Thank you. Thanks for coming here for doing this project and for presenting it to us. Much appreciated. I have some clarifying questions, I guess. How many of the other drivers on the roads try and find parking the same time that students who try and find parking themselves are other students of the high school?
So your question is how many are not students and trying to find parking at the same time?
No, how many of the other drivers are also students?
Do you mean in the area?
Yeah.
We didn't ask that. Basically, you guys only got a quick overview, but we asked, like you said, we asked students, do you take the bus, do you walk, and do you bike? And you were right, walking and biking, you're significantly less likely to be late. But the majority of the people we surveyed either drove or took the bus. And even if you take the bus, you're over, I think, or almost 50% of students were late, but we didn't ask that question.
We only surveyed people at our school, so we don't really have data from other areas like the library or maybe teachers from other schools, since they're mainly elementaries that are around high school.
The idea here is that like if a large number of students drive to school, that was the top responding group in the survey, all these students are competing for the same but becoming limited resource, right?
Yeah.
And then one solution is to increase the resource, as what you're proposing to do. And what transportation studies show is if you increase the resource, whether it's an extra lane on a freeway or more parking, before long that resource gets used. So I guess the question is, how many of the students, of your fellow students not driving would alleviate the parking problem and therefore the tardiness for the students who might simply maybe live in Woodland and have not a good reason a good alternative option than to bike to school? If you approach it from that angle, how many of you who drive, if you drive, would have to stop doing that and take another route to school in order to make the traffic experience and the parking experience better for everyone?
I'd say like 15 and 20% of the people who drive.
Yeah, it's like not linear, meaning
Yeah.
that if you get lower to the threshold, all of a sudden it ends up becoming a lot more
Yeah.
open.
Like I bike to school a lot, like it was rainy day and I biked. And it's just because it's the traffic system. It's a mess. So yeah, I think if
Good.
a significant like 15 to 20, like you were saying, that would make it way more manageable.
So 2 more questions. There is a large parking lot that people on that side of the room with the city have some control over, which is our public park. And from there, one could very easily just walk the way to the high school, and that would basically divert some traffic away from right now where most people are trying to find parking. Have you explored if that is even an option? And I haven't even talked to the city whether that's a feasible option, but that will be one way to kind of divert some people away from the location where now there's competition.
No, yeah, I think that's a really good idea. We didn't think of that. We were mainly just focused on Davis High, but I think that's a really good idea because you still have students who drive and they get there early and they can just park in that parking lot and then they can still get to school.
Yeah. And then final question, how much would we have to pay a student for them to want to bike to school? What's your price?
I mean, I would much rather drive, but it's just easier. Yeah. There should be some reward.
I mean, let me clarify here, this is not like some flippant comment, this is how people in many other places, not in the US, are successfully getting more people to not choose a car, and actually rewarding them for the choice that we want people to make. So again, that for the people who do, for a variety of reasons, take a car, it becomes a better experience for them also.
Brett?
First, let me thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciated the survey data. Is it possible to go back a slide? Actually, how about one more slide? Yeah, thank you. This is really great. I might disagree with the conclusion, but it doesn't negate the fact that I think this is really good work. And I appreciate sort of the idea of the survey, and I liked how you narrowed it down. I mean, a flip side interpretation could be, so imagine in a parallel universe, you're the exact same project group working on this, and one of your group members said, wow, all the people who bike, they get to school on time, right? So right now you show, of the drivers, what proportion are late, right? The 203 respondents who typically drive. It would be interesting to see this pie chart for the people who bicycle or walk, and I'd be curious to see how that differs. Yes?
We have that. It's
Okay.
in our longer, we can provide the link and share it with you guys. We have a longer presentation that we're presenting to our RSJ class.
Okay.
So if you want that, but we do have that. I can probably pull it up right now.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a true interest.
Yeah.
But you can imagine that, in this parallel universe, the duplicate versions of yourself go, wow, biking, we get there on time so much more. And then the question that this also brings up, proportion of students who carpool. So for instance, it's sort of drive. I don't know whether that was one of the variables that you have information on.
We did ask the proportion of students that carpool. I'll give you that first. So basically, we separated it. We asked, how do you get to school? And then if they click car, we said, oh, well, if you drive, do you blank? Drive yourself, get dropped off, carpool. 8.9% of students carpool, which was a total of 18 out of 203 responses. So that might definitely lessen the problem as well.
And then dropped off, since you have this.
Dropped off is 76, 37.4%.
So, sorry, 34.
Or 37.4%
Got
of students, yeah.
So, yeah, in this sort of alternative universe, you could see, I mean, you're coming before a commission that our inherent bias, and it is a bias, is towards fewer single vehicle trips, right? And so this parallel universe project team might come up with, well, how about if people carpool, then they might get a special permit.
Do you want to hear the bike statistics?
Sure.
Okay, so we got 70 responses for bikes, 72.9% of students, so 51, do not struggle to get to school on time, compared to the 27.1%, which is 19 students, do struggle to get to school on time. For biking, 60% of students are never late to their first period, so that's much better than driving. 32.9%, so that was 23 responses, are late 1 to 2 times a week. 7.1%, which is 5 responses, are late 3 to 5 times a week. So I think it would definitely, that could definitely improve.
Yeah, you know, if you want to email that to Jennifer and Ryan, that'd be, I think, as I said,
Okay.
I really appreciate your survey data, and it's actually useful. And as I said, I might reach a different conclusion, but that doesn't change the fact that what you've done, I'm really impressed with, and it actually is very useful. But as I said, you know, this body is kind of inherently biased towards one direction, and you know, probably my colleague in 37 seconds will talk about Unitrans and the amazing ability to get from those places in Davis via bus. But for me, no, I really appreciate this, because a lot of times we just have people come up and go, oh, you need to do X. Oh, why? Because it feels right. Whereas, you know, the statistics are interesting. And to your point, and to Brooke's point, you know, some people are coming from far distances, and so drop off or driving may be one of the kind of only options that they really have. But anyway, no, thank you for this presentation, and the data is very helpful.
Andy?
Thanks for coming out and giving the presentation tonight. This was very informative and very clear and informative, so appreciate this is great information. Also, will be a perfect lead into our next item too, since that's also on the areas near, since that's also about transportation in the areas near schools. Like I see, Brett gave you a hint, but I would be curious just to hear more about like the bus, because I know you mentioned that like people who take the bus, there also are on-time issues. So I'm curious, I mean, one, just how many students take the bus, and then like what the on-time statistics are like with that.
So, let me find it. So, okay, so like I said with cars, we separated it by what you picked. So we only got 11 responses for bus, so not a lot of students do take the bus, and 72.7%, so 8 out of 11 students do struggle to get to school on time, compared to 27.33 students that do not struggle to get to school on time. And 54, so the majority do say the bus schedule is pretty reliable. That's 54.5%, 6 total, and 45.5%, 5 individuals say they cannot rely on the bus schedule. And I think, okay, I did the math, and the majority, 27.3% of students are late 1 to 2 times a week, 36.4% are late 3 to 5 times a week, so that's the majority, compared to 36.4% of students who ride the bus are never late. And a lot of them do wish the bus schedule was more efficient, 90.9%, 10 individuals out of 11 wish it was more efficient. And sorry, I'm kind of like giving you a ton of stats, but
do any of you live in South Davis?
yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell them how long it takes to get on the bus from South Davis to Davis High?
bus to the high school before I started driving myself. And I think I'd leave my house around 7:15 each morning. I'd get to the stop by like 7:30 and I'd get it to the high school by like 8 to 8:10. But leaving any later, the
That's not
bus
too
would
bad.
get there.
You weren't too deep in South Davis, were you?
I live around El Macero.
Oh, that is actually pretty deep, okay.
Yeah.
It's better than I thought.
So I would always get there early, but that's because leaving later would be after school started. So,
Yeah,
I think I took I don't remember what bus route I took, but it wasn't the one designated for the high school. I think that's T.
Studying the routes a bit, from my perspective, it looks like the bus to, was it PQ, those lines, I think?
Yeah, I
That's
took
eight.
those when I was in junior high. too.
Yeah, they're pretty good if you live off of Covell, and if you don't, you might be lucky.
Yeah.
Also-
It'd be pretty challenging.
This is just another thing for our qualitative. We asked for the bus, like a free response. If you are frequently late, what would you say is stopping you? We got 6 responses, and a lot of them did say bus punctuality or something along the lines of that. And interestingly, people said taking the T is worse than taking the P. So I just take the P bus line, and like people just said, oh, well, there's traffic surrounding the school, so that just makes the bus late. So,
That's really good to know, and also interesting that folks are choosing like the kind of the more mainline all day buses over like because I know the T is the one that's more that runs. I mean, almost more like a school bus. So it's interesting that people are just choosing the mainline buses over that. So that's really good information to pass along. I guess one other thing I'll share is this having me think back to my own time in high school when I was using car-based transportation to get to school. When I had unfortunately a commute where there weren't the other options too. Like I lived here in Davis, but went to my schools in suburban Sacramento. So I mean that obviously would have been a very, very long bike ride or a pretty convoluted transit trip with a couple of transfers. And I was late quite often to my first period class, which I would say is something that, for me personally, like I'd say, I mean, I didn't have a terribly broad perspective of transportation beyond cars at that time. But as I definitely, I think those types of experiences for me like set the stage that as I got older and lived in other places where transit was a more viable option, and then ultimately through that like got into like biking, both biking in general and biking to and from transit as well, because I got more exposed to those options. That's in some ways that experience like set the stage for me to become more of a transit user later in life and someone who advocates for improving those options. So I just would share that as food for thought as you move forward with this. But again, really appreciate you coming out.
Thanks, Andy. So on the next slide after this one, I wasn't aware, so students can actually buy a pass it said there was a $16.
So
For your parking
if you were to get a pass for the yellow lines, you would have to be a resident in one of those areas, and you would have to prove residency for a house nearby. So students cannot get a pass to the yellow permits.
What's the $16 per year parking permit?
That's if you even live in the area.
Oh, okay. I would also say, I mean, I really appreciate you guys putting together this data. This is, you did a really good job of collecting all the information and putting this out there. And I think I would also, share some of the commissioner's concerns that when traffic is obviously a big problem, and parking is obviously a big problem. I know it's a problem for teachers as well as students around there. But I also think as you move to increase the parking, then you're going to increase the traffic, because you're increasing, as Mark said, you increase the resource, more people will take advantage of it, so now you have more people who would then change from taking the bus or biking to driving, because now there's more parking available. But I think, one of the things that came up that Brett mentioned was, preferential parking for people who are carpooling, or preferential parking for people who are coming from, a distance where they can't do it. That may help with some of this. I think the idea is that, you do want to encourage people to, use opportunities that are not going to increase traffic around here, and that, we'll try and reduce the traffic load. Anyway, I really, again, on behalf of all of us, really appreciate all the time you guys put into this. It was a good presentation. I appreciate all the facts and figures. And yeah, if you would like to forward on the full presentation to us, I would appreciate that.
Who should we send it to?
Send it to Jennifer.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay, just a couple more comments, sorry. Mark, or Brett, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. I mean, I really appreciate this. You know, I'm struck by, you're in the race and social justice class, and and this is my uninformed opinion, so take it for what you will. It seems like focusing on improving carpools would be something that it creates more accessibility, right? So, you know, it's kind of nice to have my own car, I can do whatever I want, but it's like, oh, if I get a rider, then we get to use the park in the, you know, the nearby lot or something like that. And then for the kids who may not have the resource of their own car or a parent who can drop them off or something, it creates, I think, you know, an opportunity to bring more people together. But that's just my 2 cents. Again, uninformed, just off the top of my head. Just thought I would mention that. Thank you.
Brett. Mark? Oh.
They unfortunately have one hurdle that you and I didn't have growing up, in that the first 12 months, a new student gets a license or a provisional permit, and they cannot have anybody else in their car. So they cannot park with their friends and
Hey,
neighbors.
that was around when I was around. I got a ticket for it.
So
I'm a teenager in my
I always carpooled my neighbors from into the school when I was growing up as well. I mean, that's all we did. They unfortunately don't always have that option until basically they've had their license for over a year, then that provision drops off. So they do have a little bit more of a hurdle than you or I might have had.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, the most equitable of the, transit options are the public ones. So I guess looking at public transit or improving that option would be my first thought. But in any case, I wanted to say, echo what everyone else has said, thanking you guys for coming out here. It was a pretty good presentation. Do any of you know my wife by any chance, Mrs. Campbell?
Oh my gosh, my brother has her.
Oh, okay.
For English, yeah.
Yeah, I'll let her know that someone's brother said.
You go Augustine, you go Augustine.
Okay, Mark?
So I'm gonna plant a seed here, and that seed has to do with college, and maybe an exercise in some basic economics, and asking those of you who drive, your parents, I assume that they're sponsoring that car, how much they pay for maintaining their car, putting gas or charging their car, paying insurance on their car for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old driver, which I know that it was more expensive to get insurance when we were that young. And then strike a deal with it. You forgo the car, and half the money goes to your college savings fund. And then you find a bike or a bus to take instead that may make it worth everybody's while. So just the perspective to kind of make that money work a little smarter for you going forward.
Yeah, it's a little ironic, really, that at this point, I commented that it's hard for me to tell the difference between high school students and college students in Davis now, because high school students are so much more affluent, that they dress in a more mature and adult way than the undergrads. And, my wife and I joke about that, both of us being UCD alumni as well. And in fact, that there's this conversation about all high school kids with cars when college freshmen at UCD don't have cars anymore. It's kind of it echoes the sort of classist undertone to the whole situation.
All right, again, thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next item, and appreciate you sending it forward to Jennifer so we can, I'll take a little bit more of a look at it. Okay, our next item is the traffic safety near schools with DJUSD and Davis Police. And I'll turn this over to Ryan.
Yeah, I just got a couple comments to clear this up, and we'll go from there. So in the previous meeting, you had asked for kind of a roundtable with various people that are involved with school safety. And today we've got John Ranger with the City of Davis Police Department and Karen Mesmar with the DJUSD to help help with this discussion. I did kind of want to talk about what we've been doing over the last year and a half, 2 years. And essentially the people at this table have been meeting regularly, evaluating operations at schools. Probably once every other month. The meetings normally happen when schools are in the middle of drop-off. We evaluate operations, see what's going on, make a list of recommendations, kind of working across engineering, education, enforcement, engagement, and encouragement, and evaluation, excuse me. Where we're each looking at what can be done to help address these situations. So in my case, it's additional red curbs, U-turn signs, any kind of operational changes we need to make along those lines. The district's really looking at educating and pushing out more additional information to parents and students. And PD's looking at enforcement and what they can do to help with that. I think this has really been successful. It's really helped address some of these issues. But I do want to stress that we're still really early in the program. We've been doing it, I think we've probably hit most, but not all the schools at this point. And it's something that we will continue to move forward with in the future. The purpose of this meeting was really informational, kind of had a discussion with the commission about school, to have traffic safety around the schools and see what input or thoughts that you had. And to close off my comments, I do want to kind of highlight what next steps would be for anything that you want to take on. If we're looking at new programs or initiatives or having the commission take on something in a more deliberative manner, we would have to go back to the city council to get permission to do that and come back. If you're looking at doing something that's more informational, that's probably not going to have to go through that process. And I believe that if you guys wanted to create a subcommittee, we could agendize that and bring it back at a future point in time. That's what I got.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. At this point, I'll ask for clarifying questions from commissioners. Mark?
Yeah, I just have one. How was this particular meeting on this particular topic advertised to the communities, both the school and the city communities, beyond just posting the agenda to this meeting?
I believe it was just posting the agenda like we do with all Brown Act bodies.
So no additional outreach to the school sites, classes, parents, groups, active from the, none of that, okay, thank you.
I had a question. So, Ryan, how often has the group been meeting? I know you said you've been out to most of the schools, but how often does that group get together?
We're meeting about once every 2 months. Obviously, we're not meeting during the summer. And as things happen, occasionally meetings have to shift a little bit.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions? With that, we'll take public comment. If you have public comment, please come to the podium and give your name, and everyone will have 3 minutes. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Trish Price again, Bike Davis. Safety around schools, we've been working in this area for many, many years. We have some incentive programs that we run to try to encourage kids to bike and walk to school. Safety is, of course, a huge concern for parents. Speed limits are something that I think we could control better. I know there's an assembly bill right now to propose reducing speed limits to 20 in school zones. So that would be something we would support certainly, and hopefully the city would as well. Also separating the cars from the pedestrians and bicyclists as much as possible, either by providing separate facilities that are protected, or I know the schools aren't designed to really facilitate this, but separating drop-off areas from bicycle parking can also be really helpful. I know one big problem at North Davis, which is my local school, is that everybody parks in the library lot, and the kids are trying to get into the bike parking right there at the front of the school. So, there's lots of room on the back of the school where bike parking could be located. And also maybe new paths into the back of the school, bicycle paths, pedestrian paths into the back of the school would be helpful so the kids don't have to go across the wet lawns. That kind of thing could help. I know that could help at Karamazoo as well, across Mace Ranch. There's only that one little path into the back of the school, which seems like a waste to me. A lot of fence line, there's a lot of fence line there. You forgot to stop the timer, so. Okay, so I will wrap it up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jennifer.
I
Is there any other public comment on this topic?
My name is Stacy Clark, and I had set in a public read on this topic, and so I guess kind of skipped over after public speaking. Is when that falls under that, or?
Sorry, we're misunderstanding.
I had sent in a public read on this topic.
Oh, like an email?
Mm-hmm. I sent it in by 3 o'clock today.
You forwarded it to us.
Oh.
Yeah, it was for all the commission members and.
It's not going to be heard, or?
I mean, we all the commission members, read the emails that we get. We don't reiterate them.
They're not read publicly then?
Correct, they're in the back, they're printed out in the back, they're in the binder.
Okay.
But you can read.
But yeah, I
You
mean.
can read it,
like,
okay, well, you might have me stumble through it, because I wasn't expecting to read, so.
I mean, if you just want to summarize it or get your own question, I mean, we've read it, so, but if you just like to highlight what you think is important, that'd be great.
Well, I think I'll just read the whole thing, so you can hear it straight from my mouth, because it's kind of disturbing, the safety in the community and how things are marked up and the lights that are replaced and different signage, so I'll just start from the top. Okay, so I just, thanks for, you might want to reset the clock. I don't know. Okay, so sadly, I'm no longer employed with Safe Side Guard Services. My employer, Dana Furman, had no plan in place for crossing guards being harassed in their work environment. Due to her lack of wanting to report what I had experienced to the Davis PD, I felt it to be unsafe for me to return to my post as a crossing guard. To relay my experience, on many occasions, I brought to my employer's attention how unsafe my post on Birch and Covell had become. The lack of any safety crossing outlined and painted in the main and sub-crossing is disturbing alone. Signage of 2 no turn on reds is a joke. They need to be replaced with no turn on red lights already. This has gone on too long. One of them is where the crossing guard tries to keep the cars from turning on the red into students and bikes. When my employer, Dina, would check in with me at my post, she would say to me, "Your post is the most unsafe in the city." Once or twice, I witnessed her taking pictures of the unsafe conditions. Then she would tell me she was going to address this with the city and for me not to get involved. On the afternoon of March 19th, during half-day dismissal, I was working my scheduled 1:30 to 2 shift, one part of 3 that day. It was in the middle of the shift when a grayish silver Nissan sedan was stopped on the red turn that I spoke of above. I was coming back in from crossing a group of students, when the Nissan was uncontrollably honking and waving at me, thinking maybe I know them, or maybe they need something. I then approached the passenger side, rolled down window of the Nissan. The young white male in his late 20s in a white t-shirt started yelling at me, "Stop waving your fucking sign in front of me, you fucking bitch." Me, "I'm sorry, I didn't wave my paddle in front of you." Him, "Get your fucking stupid ass back on the curb, fucking retard." Me, "Are you threatening me?" Him, "I told you, you stupid bitch, get your ass back up on the fucking curb or I will come for you." As I was backing away from the car, a little hand probably primary age, stuck their middle finger out of the back window yelling, "Yeah, you stupid bitch." I froze in this situation out of fear. Was not able to get the license plate number. During my time out on Birch Lane in Cobell, I had been yelled at, cars almost hitting me, and students and bikes and everything else by cars, running red lights, eyewitness car accidents, scooter accidents, bicycle accidents, and even turkeys being killed in front of me by cars speeding down Cobell. We all gotta remember when we're thinking Cobell and Birch, that's a 35 along there. Should actually, I don't know, should be a 25, but no one abides by it. The turkey that died in front of me was the size of a primary child, like a kindergartner. Car must have been going about 45, didn't even care to stop. He wouldn't even probably have known that he hit a turkey, a kid, whatever. This is very disheartening to me. I have been part of the Birch Lane community for many years. Both of my sons, now 27 and 21, attended Birch Lane. During these years, my husband and myself served our neighborhood school in many roles on the PTA, board, site council. I'm sad this happened. I really enjoyed being out there with the kiddos. So I'm just gonna end by, I'm surprised that my old employer, Safe Site, they're contracted with the city, okay? They're not here tonight. No one's representing what you're speaking about. So that's disturbing right there, okay? Another thing, why we only have 2 stop on reds out there, the signs up anyway. Back when I served on the PTA board there, I remember one parent jumping up and down at one of our PTA meetings one night. Well, we finally got 2 signs out there in the main intersection. You know why? Because the crossing guard got hit a couple weeks ago and the city decided to do something about it. So that was brought to my attention also by some parents that recognized me from being there years ago. Be careful out there, Stacy, but we appreciate you being out here looking over our kids. So it's amazing what a few lights, some new signs, and some fresh paint can do to Birch and Cobell that hasn't been done like around the rest of the town. It's very disheartening to me. When I started the school year off, I had started on the Mesa intersection in front of the fire station. Wow, that's like Taj Mahal painted over there, right? We've redone curbs a few times so bikes don't get hit. Fresh paint, everything's outlined. Crossing guard doesn't even really have to do their job over there. They just stand back and go, ooh, this is a nice day. But somewhere like Birch and Cobell, not so much. It's the busiest one in town. I saw kids coming from Harvard, from Holmes, from St. James, the high school, Birch. You got all the schools coming through there. They're even going to Da Vinci. Okay, so it's busier even out in front of where the high schoolers just spoke of. Okay? So people need to wake up.
Stacy, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there other public comment? Okay, if there is no other public comment, we'll move on to discussion by commissioners. Hey, Commissioner Roos. Sure. But Mark, did you want to?
I'll start also because I was the one who asked us to spend more time on this issue and have conversations with people in this room. Stacy, thank you for being here and for relaying your experiences. Unfortunately, they're fortunately not as extreme but not unique, as I think most people here know. And maybe if nothing else, I hope that we can continue to move forward with some honesty. That we have a reputation of being a bike-friendly place. We are more bike-friendly than many places, but we have a ways to go, and if we don't continue to push for the bike friendliness that we have built up, we're gonna lose it. We're gonna lose it because of driver behavior creating unsafe situations. Let me be very clear here. The majority of people who I see driving cars in Davis are wonderful. They get it. They go slow, and particularly when you're with a kid, they slow down. But every other time when I'm on my bike with my kid, there is interactions. There is near misses. There is collisions. And so unfortunately, they're not one-offs. And when I talk to the crossing guard in front of the school that I end up mostly spending time because my two youngest kids go there, she's getting hit regularly, or almost getting hit, and feels very, very vulnerable. And to the point that some time ago, her son was trying to reach out to the police department to try and get something done here, and this was her first year on that spot. Like, she's new to this shift. So unfortunately, I think what we've just heard in public comments is not an anomaly. I think it's a pattern, and I think it's shameful that we are not able to be more forceful as a city and as a school district in addressing that. I think what we're seeing is a number of drivers, sometimes drivers who are parents of the same kids who we are trying to shepherd to school safely at crossing stations, who find it normal that this is what's happening. And evidently, despite everybody in this room having the best intentions, which I do not doubt for 1 second, we are not able to find a response to this. And I think I don't know what the format is going to be, Ryan and Jennifer, but I think the experiences that some of the public commenters who were here wrote to the commission, that many of you have heard from others. I know many of you have heard and see this in person. This is not something that is new to us. I think this is going to require a consistent, sustained effort going forward. I don't know if this is going to be a subcommission or something else that we have to pass to the city council. Traffic and traffic safety starts with kids. The question really becomes, for whom do we make this transportation in this place safe? Some Dutch cities do this for 8-year-olds. That's a bridge too far for even most Dutch cities. But the question is, at what point should we be able to let children go to a location unsupervised? And right now, I'm doing it so this place is safe enough that I'm letting my 13-year-old bike to holes. And at the same time, I'm standing in the roadway every morning, watching him go, making sure that the drivers around me are calming down because they see me in that roadway, because it's Marina Circle and it's wide, it's far too wide. And we all know this, and this is not going to change overnight. But we can at least, hopefully, take a step back and acknowledge that we have a long way to go. This place is better than most U.S. cities, but our mode share for transportation for active is still like put 10, 20, maybe 30% behind even your average European city. And until we get fewer cars on these roads and more people to actually share the experience of biking and walking, our streets are going to continue to be safe. There are real barriers that the police department has in enforcing, that Ryan has, and how quickly he can rebuild our streets. And in the meantime, what I have missed in this discussion and what becomes blatantly clear is at least the intellectual honesty of acknowledging that we have a problem and to address it by communication. And that means that if somebody like Stacy reports what she just did, which I became aware of, I don't know, Steve, never met her, but I became aware of the student next door, and at the time I sent out an email to a number of people in this room, school district, police department, city, saying that you have two choices. Either you find a way to respond to this and make it very, very clear this is unacceptable, or you don't. And to my knowledge, nothing was done. Meaning that you have now signaled that this is entirely normal behavior. And I'm sure all of you, if we were to ask you, would say, this is terrible, we should not condone this, and yet we have. So what I'm going to ask us to do is to pivot our communication to not just teaching kids how to be safe and wear helmets and handle their bikes well, which we should do, it's valuable, but to also pivot our communication, very explicitly, to those parents of to those drivers who are parents of kids who apparently need to hear it, that it's not okay to speed up when the signal hits orange, just so you can not have to wait a cycle. Because I've documented this 6-7 times in just the school year, just at the one intersection where I spend at most one cycle every morning. It is not okay to stop in the bike lane because I don't know, that's where you don't wanna, I don't know, walk somewhere else. You just door another student because you are too, I don't know, it's just too inconvenient for you to find a parking spot. Therefore, you let your kid out dooring other cyclists, other kids. I see this regularly still to this day. I saw that Willard the other day. And that it's not okay to actually go, instead of 25 miles an hour, at which speed still about 60% of people outside of a car getting hit at that speed will have an injury. If it's a pickup truck, it'll be 80%. That's 25 mile per hour limit we hope people will hold on. Instead, we kind of find it normal that they go 40, 45 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour. At those speeds, a kid or an adult will suffer some serious injuries or worse. Now, I looked up, and I don't know, Ryan and Jennifer, if those statistics exist within the city. They may well. I looked at the Berkeley, I think UC Berkeley maintains the transportation injury statistics, and I looked up all the collisions that happened over the last 12 years in a half-mile radius from all of our school sites. It was manual, I may have missed a couple, but I found 85 collisions. Out of those 85 collisions, 75 was with the cyclist. Of those collisions, and there is a discussion to be had about who attributes fault at collisions, I worry about my kid getting into a collision and hoping that he or she will be capable of holding their own and whoever gets the narrative right. In the at-fault findings, 56% of those collisions, the driver was at fault. So the majority was found at fault by the responding officer. Fortunately, no deaths, a couple of severe injuries, but almost all of them involve the car, meaning that's where the risk is coming from. That statistic should tell us that it's high time that we move away from just educating kids on how to bike their bikes safely. It really should mean that we start to educate drivers. And there are driver education programs for delivery drivers, there are driver education programs for regular drivers. You know what? Why, if we find it so important as we do that our kids are able to get to school safely, why don't we expect that drivers who want to drive their kids to school with a car take a course? This is why you don't speed. Here's the stats. This is why orange means stop, not go. This is why never ever let your kid go out on the passenger side while you stop at the driveway so they can door the passing cyclist. Will that prevent everybody from behaving appropriately? No, it will not stop people. But I think most people who engage in behaviors that we see are neighbors. I got hit once or twice by a neighbor making a poor choice, but it wasn't some other person. It was somebody who lives in our neighborhood. They are not intending poorly. They make poor choices, sometimes because the design allows it. But I also like to believe that if we educate them a little bit better on the consequences of these actions, that they're not beyond, you know what, let's change our behavior. Not everybody, and there's always enforcement that we're going to have to use for some of those people. But I would like to believe that the majority of people in this town is not beyond, you know what, can we please slow down a little bit? At least that's something that we can do today. But it means that we need to communicate. So next time, or maybe even this time, when this happens, and a school principal becomes aware of another driver almost hitting a bunch of kids trying to cross at an intersection where we have to pay a person to make it safe for them to do so, when that happens, there goes an email out to all the parents that says, this is what happened today, this is unacceptable. And that's not what's happening right now. We have to fight for this to even become a discussion at a meeting like this. When my kids have an emergency response on campus, I get an email. I appreciate that. Like a generic email, this is what happened. We know how to communicate. But we don't in this case. When there's a TikTok trend going around where kids are doing things like sticking metal into Chromebooks, we get an email. That's appreciated, thank you. But again, we know how to communicate. The other day, I ended up videoing, because I do this these days, because that way I'm protected when something happens to me by a driver. I saw two kids on an e-bike running a red at the same intersection where I reported half a dozen people doing the same thing in a car. And in response to that, Ryan and John Ranger have come out, we've talked, those were good conversations, but nothing has happened at an intersection. And for sure, those drivers have not been confronted with the poor choices that they've made because there's limitations in how well we can't. Well, those two kids did the exact same thing. Less potential for damage because only a bike with two bodies on it, but they almost hit another student. I got the video, I emailed it to the two principals involved, Papua and Emerson, and within an hour I had a response. And the next time I saw those kids, I didn't do it anymore. Meaning, we are totally comfortable addressing behavior of our children, as we should. We're a school district, we can do this. And we somehow are really apprehensive when we are asked to do the same thing for their parents. And unless we are finding it in our ways to do that a little better, we're not going to solve this, and our streets are not going to become safe enough for a larger number of people to actually go by bike or walk. Leave those cars around. And with that is congestion and jockeying for position is also going to go away. So I'm encouraging the city and the school district to really develop a strategy to communicate a lot better. And involve the public, educate the public that unless we collectively make these streets a little bit safer, we're going to be suffering the consequences in terms of less ridership, less active transportation, with all the downsides that come from that. The city is very clear in what its climate plans are, what its active mobility goals are, and unless we get a handle on the type of behaviors that I think are on display by some drivers in Davis, we're not going to meet those goals. And we cannot see those things separate from each other. I have one more comment later on, but I'll stop here. Sort of going a little bit long. I think this is important stuff, and I really appreciate the commission as well as the people.
Actually, if we could, so I'd like John to respond to the education aspect with the driver safety.
So in addition to what is already the minimal state requirement for people to get a driver's license in the state of California, we're trying to emulate a pilot program that Roanoke Park has put out where we actually address teen driver safety around the schools for the newer license holders. This is a pilot program that we're trying to get off the ground with the school district's help. We'll be giving a presentation next week to all the sophomores who are coming of age to get their instructional permits or their driver's license coming forward, and then we'll be doing a weekend class with a practical that includes like a demonstration of time distance, why looking down at your phone, even in a 20 or 25, can cause such a passage of distance of striking a pedestrian or a bicyclist. So it'll involve practical exercise for these young drivers so that they can be safer when they're on our roads around pedestrians and bicyclists. And it's very hard to get to every driver, but it's something that we can, with the school district's help, affect the most blank slates and get them to develop good habits when they're hitting the road as a new driver before they start developing the bad habits that we see so
Well, very quickly respond to that. That's helpful and appreciated. The parents, the people who I unfortunately have near misses with are neighbors, 65, 35, parents, people I know. So yes, but it needs to be an and. And the people who make streets less safe around school drop-off are people who drive kids to school. So there's another demographic, in addition to the one you were just mentioning, who I think would help the school district. We should be aiming for.
Brett? Thank you for your comments, Mark, and half serious, half joking. It's good to have you on the commission because in comparison, my comments seem brief, whereas often they seem long-winded. But in all seriousness, thank you for your comments. I had a question. On the staff report, it mentions that the group did go to Birch Lane. Did you see similar issues with the right turn on red, and did you have recommendations around that school site that might address some of the comments that the crossing guard provided to us, or former crossing guard?
We didn't have any comments specifically to that intersection, although I do have a couple things that I'll get to in a minute. When we were at Birch, I do recall that we had a lot of discussion about the back entrance into Birch and the need to enhance pedestrian crossings and sidewalks there, as well as some ADA improvements, as well as enhancing the signage at the crosswalks that are on Birch right in front of the school. Birch is unique in that there's an additional crossing guard that PTA provides at one of those crosswalks. Since then, we've installed a number of signs at the crosswalks, including ones in the middle of the street that say yield to pedestrians, as well as updating some of the other signs to fluorescent yellow green. In regards to the intersection of Birch and Colville, I do have it on the list and a new design to restripe that intersection as part of an upcoming striping project that we're working on. That will address a lot of the striping concerns with the faded striping that they had, update things to the current city standard. We will go out there and review the signage and see if additional no right turn on reds or signs are necessary. And we have recently reevaluated the signal timing at that intersection and made some modifications to pedestrian crossing times, yellow times, and some other things to try to increase the safety of the intersection.
Okay. I know when the city on 113 exiting at Russell, 113 North exiting Russell to head Russell eastbound, there was a traditional no right turn on red, and the compliance was iffy at best. That's a very heavy cyclist crossing on Russell on the southbound portion. The city replaced it with no right turn on red that sort of flashes, and it seemed like the compliance improved fairly substantially. That might be something to consider. When my son currently cycles to high school, so I was a little surprised what that group's recommendation was, candidly. Having said that, I did appreciate the data collection. When he was in elementary school, I mean, it was always a positive feeling that I got when I saw the police department there in the mornings during drop-off. Magically, the presence of a police officer slowed things down. Everybody was sort of on their best behavior. To Mark's point, would probably be not best behavior, but appropriate behavior. And so, our commission, there's certain limitations, obviously, that the city has to live within, but perhaps it'd be interesting, Officer Render, what would it take in terms of resources or direction and to have each officer, when they start their morning shift, begin it at either an elementary or junior high? So people come on board. Related to that, I know Mark talked about education. No one is required to do additional education. However, if they do get a ticket, there can be an educational component attached to that. And so I'm curious, give us, I know it's a hard question because I haven't prepped you for this, but order of magnitude. So if we said, hey, this is really what the city would like to do. Each officer starts their shift during the morning drop-off period at one of the schools. Magnitude of cost increase. Is this a 100% increase in police department staffing? Is this a 10%? Just give us a ballpark sense, because one of the things I think our commission can do is we can identify bite-sized, achievable things that might make a meaningful difference. And I feel like an officer present at the school site during that period, in my experience, does really make a difference.
So there's a lot of layers to that, right?
Yeah.
Are you talking about having the officers who are working just be at a school every morning when they begin their shift, or are you talking about staffing every single school every single morning?
No, just the existing officers to have them start their shift when practical, right? So it might not be 5 days a week, it could be 3 days a week, but just to create that default practice.
So we make a point of trying to do that at the start of every school year, and that becomes like a standing thing of like, hey, we want to start everybody off on the right foot. Please, if you don't have any other calls pending, because we have to triage our calls based on the severity to the public, and that's just a given in law enforcement. If there's a danger to a person, that we have to go. If there's a crime in progress, we have to go. If there's not anything pending, that's when we have the luxury of choosing our proactive activity, like going and being in front of a school. Now, in terms of a cost increase, if you're working with the personnel that's on shift, there's a 0% additional cost because they're already at work. So it's just a matter of whatever the staffing is that day, what calls are pending, what caseload someone's working on, allowing them the opportunity to go and do that. It's something we strongly encourage all our officers to do. In regards to our staffing, our typical staffing is 1 supervisor and 4 officers. So 5 people working the streets with 8 elementary schools and 3 junior highs. So you're looking at less than half the schools having an officer in front of them at best. So we would love to be able to allow that to happen every single morning as best we can. Whenever I'm there in the morning, I strongly encourage all the officers. I don't even care if you go and write a ticket. I would just want you to go be there, because every time I go sit in front of Birch, everybody truly is on their best behavior. Even when Mark and I have been walking inspections, they see an officer in uniform, they're on their best behavior. I think we only had one really bad guy that morning. And he did not like me pulling him over when I was on foot. So to address that, there is no additional cost. We've been working with some OTS grants that include some additional enforcements, and whenever I direct officers who have signed up to work those overtime shifts that are covered by that OTS grant, one of my directives is, if you're going to work this, you either need to work in the morning that overlaps the school drop-off, or you need to work in the afternoon that overlaps the school pickup. And I expect you during that time period to be in front of the schools. So we do try to address that with additional funding whenever those days come up that are applicable to something around the schools. Like this big bike month, we'll have some specific days for bike pedestrian safety, where officers will be directed to do that activity in and around schools.
So that's helpful. So it sounds like the wish is there, but it's a little hit or miss in terms of whether an officer chooses to do that or not do that. Let's just say that their triage of calls would allow them to go there, but it's not a specific directive, like, oh, you have an opening, you will go to a school site.
Correct. However, when we do see an area like, say, Patman or North Davis, where we've had incidents that have been reported, that particular officer who is assigned to that beat will be directly told, you will go do this, barring a crime against a person happening in progress that you need to go to. You need to be in front of this school. This is a problem area right now. Fix it. We had that in front of Korematsu for a while, and KB, before she retired, was that beat, and she spent every day for weeks out there, because that beat was traditionally slower. It allowed her the opportunity to go out there and address that problem. So it just really depends on the officer and their workload that morning. So.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Just briefly, two other things. In terms of best practices, are there traffic safety cameras that have been located in the areas adjacent to kind of the school loading and unloading zone, and have those proven to be effective?
So this is something we've been discussing. We aren't allowed to put any cameras up.
Yeah, aware of that, yes. Without specific city council approval, yes.
Well, and as far as on the school district property, that would be a DJUSD question.
Yeah, so I'm talking about the public roadway, so not videoing the school ground, just the streets adjacent to the school ground where people are doing their pick up and drop off activities.
So this is something that Ryan and I have been discussing. New York, the city of New York had a pilot program that they passed several years ago, and they have built it up to where they now have traffic safety cameras, which include radar, around every school in the greater New York City area. They have over 1,800 cameras, and they have pushed through legislation in the state of New York to allow them to write administrative tickets based on the camera readings. That is not something we have in California yet. They're doing a pilot speed-based program in 6 cities in the state right now. Is it 6 or 7? 6 municipalities. Davis is not one of them. But if that pilot program is approved and gains traction, this is something that we as a municipality can look to do, where we could, with city council approval, put up these traffic safety cameras with radar units, and then therefore aid us in the enforcement even when officers aren't there. What's unique to the city of New York's program is that it's written to the car. That's why it's an administrative citation, not to the driver, and it's a set fee. And so this is a really unique program. It's very interesting to hear about. If something like that were to apply in California, The idea being, you know, if a student is a bad offender around getting to high school because they're late and they're speeding, and then their parents get 2 or 3, you know, $50 speeding tickets, then it becomes on the parent to, hey, you're not going to get the car if you keep doing this. Or if it's if UC Davis student late to class coming down Oak is speeding, then they would have to hit their pocketbook enough to correct behavior. We know we can't enforce bad behavior out. This is something we've talked about in the previous iteration of this committee, is that there's education, engineering, and enforcement is just a small component of this. So we don't have any traffic safety cameras in and around the schools. We don't have any that we're allowed to do. We do have one provision for mobile traffic cameras, and we've been working on a way to try to put that out and gather data. We can't do any enforcement based off of it. It would just be data gathering because of that limitation of the California law on what you can enforce via camera when it comes to traffic. Right now it's limited to red light only.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other piece was, this is very helpful, Ryan and Jennifer, thank you for bringing this item to us. I think the idea was that this would be the first step, and then the second step would be to maybe hear from perhaps places like the Netherlands, where they have changed the design around school sites with the goal of making them more safe for students who are coming by foot or by bike. And the idea here is, we know that the laws are different here, but you know, having a 30-minute presentation with graphics kind of outlining the thinking and the ideas, this will create some ideas for us and directions for us to start thinking about that may actually be applicable here. And so this background information I think is really helpful to kind of know what you guys are doing, and thank you for doing this and going to the school sites and evaluating them. But I think the next step, as we are more forward thinking, right, we have this thing, Reimagine Russell, which is not completely funded, but this idea of what does Russell Boulevard look 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I think the same could be done around school sites, which is, what are some of the best practices that exist out there in the world? Which ones might work? Which ideas are they pursuing that we might have an alternative way, but approaching the same ideas? So, I would find that helpful as, I'll follow on to this meeting. And I do appreciate the public comment, and we did receive your email earlier. And, I'm sorry that your employer wasn't as supportive as, from reading the email. It sounds like they didn't do a great job in handling it, but I think, I'll wrap up now, but to Mark's point, many of these issues exist on all school sites. And so, if we can come up with some specific bite-sized improvements, it'll really make a difference for all of us. Thank you.
I want to follow up both on a couple of things that Mark said and some things that Brett said. And I'm kind of coming at this, as I've said before, both my kids were hit by unattended drivers on their way to school. So this is kind of an issue that's pretty close to my heart. And one of them was hit very close to home. This was, actually there at the school site that was hit by a driver who had dropped off their kid at school and was not paying attention and ran into her. One of the concerns I have from an incident last year is that the schools are collecting the data and reporting that data about accidents or incidents that are happening at the schools. I know one of the students that I worked with at the high school last year got doored in front of homes. And the administration was very reluctant to address it with the driver or collect any information on it and put the onus of responsibility on the bicyclist, saying it was their fault. And as far as I know, the incident was never reported. And it got me thinking, I'm wondering if this is happening at other school sites where we're not actually collecting the data about these incidents are happening. And to Mark's point, if we have those incidents, those should be being communicated just like any other incident that happens in school to the broader school community, so that parents are aware that these things are happening and that kids are getting hurt, that there are incidents that are going on. I think in general, again, I agree with Mark. I think a lot of the issue is not so much the younger drivers, although there's certainly issues there. It is the parents of school-age kids who are dropping their kids off and they're late for work and their kids are late for class and they're in a hurry. And so, they're not paying attention a lot of times, or they feel that they're getting to where they're going is more important than what's going on with the other students that are coming and going to school, the other parents who are coming and going to school. I don't know what kind of, I agree we need more outreach efforts to the school communities, whether that's something that happens at a back-to-school night, whether that's a general community meeting with the school communities, where we talk about school safety and about how people are, dropping their kids off at school and being aware of those kind of issues. I think that's something that, the school district can be more proactive about. And I do realize, as what Brett was saying, it's very site-specific. I mean, every one of these schools has a different circulation issue. Every one of them has a different issue about how kids are coming and going, or where cars are dropping off, or what the speed limits are in the surrounding streets. So there's no one blanket sort of solution that we're going to come up with here, but I think that the city and the school district need to work together to start addressing these issues in the long run of using, we have toolkits that we're using on other things. I know we're going to talk about those later on some of the transportation projects coming up. We should have a toolkit for what we're using at the schools. What kinds of things that are being used other places, what kinds of things that we're using in other places around the city can we apply to these specific sites? Are there things that we can do that are, whether it's striping or, signage or lighting or whatever? And, there should be a toolkit that we have that we can use and apply by identifying some of these areas. So yeah, I think it is, and I think also to the point of having, the police enforcement. I mean, enforcement is obviously a big component of this. And it's not just, I think as you were alluding to, it's not the actual writing of tickets or the actual enforcement, it's the perception of enforcement. And so I think it's great to have them there, and I've noticed them, like in our neighborhood, that they're there at the beginning of the year, and they'll be on the sides, and people definitely pay attention. If there is a random police car there once a month, once every 2 weeks, that has as big an influence as whether they're there every day, because it's just people, if they know or don't know, they're going to be there, but if it might pop up from time to time, that's a huge deterrent to people to, not have as much bad behavior. But I think, again, I think outreach and communication is a big part of this, because a big part of the issue is the parents themselves, and I think that's where we need to start addressing a lot of these issues. So, I'm sorry. Officer Ranger?
I just wanted to echo and appreciate the comments about engaging the school community more, and I've been jotting down some ideas. I think we can calibrate and address things systematically across the schools in a general way, with specific, obviously addressing the uniqueness of each site, but we can do a better job of providing the directives of our expectations for our families coming to and from school, as well as some more deliberate spot checks in places where it matters a lot to all of us. That's why this group started a bit organically in response to a parent concern, and then the obvious need was to meet more regularly, and we really do read the emails and discuss them and look at what we're able to do. I have jotted down, I train up all of our school administrators, and maybe empowering them with something physical they could hand to a parent if they are hesitant to address something in real time. They could just give. I think there's some really good ideas here that are being generated to be to layer on to what our administrators in campus security and our district safety coordinator, Mark Hicks, is already doing on a daily basis.
Officer Ranger, did you?
I was just going to add that one of the things that Ryan and I have also been addressing is something called the driver feedback program, where it uses a camera that doesn't record anything of the public, so there's no surveillance. But what it does is it observes the behavior of the driver, and then upstream of the driver it has a feedback board like phone down, put your seatbelt on, slow down, individually to the vehicle. We're exploring whether those type of things would be applicable on some of our major arterial routes, and specifically towards in and around schools. Because it would, see the person with their hand on the wheel, one hand holding a phone, and it would flash a sign, put your phone down and drive, or don't text and drive, something that's specific to that person approaching the board. But those are sometimes cost prohibitive, and whether they fit within our existing surveillance ordinance for the city. So these are all avenues that address the availability of manpower versus or personnel at these sites. And there are we're trying to look at a lot of different ways to address this concern, because it is very concerning to have these incidents in around the school.
Thank you. Mark, I know you have another comment. Let me ask other commissioners if they have anything. Andy?
I'll be brief, but just want to echo all the comments you've heard. This is a great discussion. Just want to echo the importance of just really putting, schools, really everywhere, schools especially, have been definitely at the place where safe access needs to be the priority over the ability to drive a car. So just want to echo those comments. I think also just one thing to add is just when we do, the packet discusses like the quick fill option, but also the opportunities for bigger projects. They are expensive, but there are opportunities for that. And just want to encourage staff that, just in light of the discussion today, and especially like in the public comment we heard, that sounds like a terrifying situation that you had to experience out there. So we want to apologize for that on behalf of our community. But just with that in mind, just when we do get these bigger projects, like say on Mace, when we did put in a great road diet that really improved bike access to Pioneer Elementary, or the proposal on 14th Street, where we had, for 1 week, we had that glorious demonstration project where we had the protected bike lane in there that did a ton to improve bike access to Davis High. It made it much more easier, and maybe some of those folks that we heard from earlier would have been more likely to bike there, and that was in place just because it was a much more comfortable and safer experience. But in both those situations, in the end, unfortunately, the voices of the drivers won out, and that's why lanes got put back in on Mace. That's why the 14th Street project got scaled back. So just want to echo want to urge, in light of the discussion tonight, that when we do get opportunities for projects like that in the future, even when, there are going to be drivers who don't want to change their routines and are going to be very loud. But just in those situations, we want to encourage staff and encourage council to remember this discussion and trust your expertise. You're the professionals here, so stick with the really good projects that you've planned, and don't just scale them back because of a few loud voices that might happen to show up to a meeting. So just wanted to add that to the discussion.
Thanks, Andy. Mark?
So I appreciate the discussion, and we have to move forward here. This is not easy, but we cannot not. A couple of things. When those of us who we expect leadership from, I'll just be frank here, most of us who are in those positions are unlike the people on this commission. As Commissioner Lee was saying, are car biased. It might actually require us to acknowledge that, maybe we should step out of our comfort zone and just outside of the set way of thinking that everything is by default by car, because most people who grew up in California grew up centered around cars. Just acknowledge that is probably maybe going to be helpful in allowing us to shift those conversations towards trying to address the behaviors that we've talked about. When we talk about making it a more likely choice to bike, the thing that I know from conversations the commission is not always talking about is to not just look at the routes, but also make sure the infrastructure is there. That means there's bike parking that is shaded and shielded from the elements. There is dots not connected between putting up roof-mounted solar for cars, but then not thinking to maybe relocate the bike racks to where it's best positioned for the rack-mounted solar, so that you hit two birds, one stone. Cars don't need roofs, but cyclists actually wouldn't prevent from the shielding of the elements, both when it's raining as well as when it's blazing hot out there. And I know that we're just not connecting those dots. I know that discussion has been shelved, but when it comes back to the school district, I think that will be a good way to reprioritize who we're building that shape for. The other thing is cameras. I think that the discussion today and also the comments today really behoove us to revisit what would it take for us to protect our crossing guards with a camera. I know that there is a council action required for that. The incidents that we've heard today, I think, I don't know the answer to the question, Ryan, you don't have to answer it like we don't know, but I think it would be good to bring that back up because clearly we have multiple people who are on the receiving end of behavior that is frankly borderline violent, like driving a car into a crossing guard, as well as really accosting to the point people are just walking away from a job. If that's not enough justification to protect these people with camera, and if nothing else, that would create a powerful deterrent. You're on video. I'm not even talking about enforcement or consequences. The fact that people will know in the general audience that these are our crossing guards and they are recording their interactions just like police officers do. This one is like $400. We have like 13 or 17 crossing guards. That's not going to break the bank. It's all on public streets, so you don't have to deal with that problem. And just the fact that there is an interaction that is recorded is probably going to be enough of a deterrent. I'm not even suggesting that we want to take a space in it, but if untoward behavior happens, well, you can go back to that. That should not be hard. So let's just explore how we can do that. And the final one is, what is an existing, to Brett's point, there's an existing law in the books, it's been for quite some time, 20 years in California, that does allow traffic designers in the city to reduce traffic speed limits around school sites to 15 or 20 miles an hour, depending on how far away. And San Mateo and other areas in the Bay Area have done that successfully. And it doesn't solve all issues, but it takes speed out of the equation. I've even provided Ryan with, like, here's the contour maps of how to do that. We should. Because at the end of the day, and I know the city, this is my final recommendation, the city has a website about speed. And it says speed is not a factor in the frequency of collisions. And I made a comment about this by email a little while ago, and then because it cited some research, and that line got taken out. That whole website that suggests that speed is not an issue, it's hard to comport with the facts of how speed matters. Speed makes collisions worse, makes the chances of injury worse. And so I'm sorry, but right now what we have something about myths about speed, just lifted from websites from other cities. Who knows where they got that data from? But it doesn't comport with what the highway insurance folks, the adjusters of insurance policies have to pay when people get hit by cars. Their data show very clearly that no, speed makes a big difference. And it should not be hard for us to say, you know what, let's just do away with the boilerplate language that somebody at some point put up and actually put the actual data. Speed does matter. Speed does kill. It doesn't mean that trying to bring a QR and based on that can help enforce a little bit. I acknowledge all those concerns. But can we please be a little more honest and just acknowledge that speed is a factor and we might not be able to control it from the website, but at least let's educate the community that it is the single biggest driver of the severity of injuries to people outside of cars when collisions happen. I mean, that's part of the education process that I think should be, that we can start tomorrow. So can we do that?
Well, thank you, Mark. So our local road safety plan is a great place to start. The line that you're talking about was on a website from like probably maybe 10 to 15 years ago that Ryan and I did not write. And so we cleared that up as soon as you brought it to our attention. But the local road safety plan does identify that most collisions are caused by speed, and we're very, very aware of that. And most tickets that the police hand out that are traffic related are speed related. So there is an absolute correlation between that. So we totally understand the importance of speed and how it affects collisions.
So I'm glad because there's a website right now that still talks. I mean, that's a website. That specific one, I'm not talking about the road safety plan, which I'm not having an issue with here. There's a whole website that suggests that speed is not an issue, and all chunks of it are just coming from different city websites. Let's just replace that with the actual, like, here's the science that tells us very clearly that speed is a significant factor.
So we are working towards that. We have a large number of traffic public works websites, and the city is in the process of updating and removing a lot of that older information. It is something we're working on, but it really hasn't been a high priority, and we'll get at least that one addressed in the near future.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no other commissioner comments, I thank you all for your, insight and contributing to this conversation. I think, obviously, all of us feel pretty strongly about this issue, and that this is something that needs to be, an important part of what we're doing as a school district, as a police department, as a transportation department, in the city to provide, a higher level of safety for, the many students we have at the various campus sites. I know this was kind of an informational discussion item. I obviously don't want to just see it drop here. I'd like us to, have some follow-up on this or to carry this forward. And I'm not sure what the commission's thoughts on that might be.
Would you be open to requesting staff to see whether we could get a presentation about some of the innovations that other places are trying, with the idea that we might get some insights and also maybe some ideas that we could borrow/steal from them for future thinking, just to kind of elevate the knowledge base of, what other places are, trying. So for instance, Officer Raymond talked about New York City and these traffic cameras. I don't know whether the magnitude of improvement is 2% or 20%, so that would be interesting. But I also do know, I've mentioned this before, in the Netherlands, they are redesigning the physical aspects of the front of the school and restricting how people arrive to and from the school site to improve safety. Just a couple examples, just even if it's more of a, interesting, kind of food for thought, and then, maybe when, for instance, Cesar Chavez underwent a fairly sizable change on the school site, and now we're talking about the Anderson Road plan, maybe this could inform some decisions, in the future.
I mean, I certainly think this is something that, could be also, incorporated into the city's, future plans, like when we're talking about this moving transportation forward plan, which we'll get to here momentarily. I mean, this is part of transportation. This is part of, creating safety and meeting some of the city council's goals. They're already in there. So I think that, this is the kind of thing that can get incorporated into those plans to help move forward how we're addressing school site safety. I don't know if that may be right, please.
So if I could make a suggestion, one of the items we're going to talk about in the next item is Quick Build program. And I think this really, a part of that is what we're looking for is a toolkit. We've actually had it starting, we've already started drafting it, and that's probably a very good item to bring to you in this summer after the recess, and use as a jumping off point to talk about a more tailored school safety toolkit as well.
And personally, I'd love to see everyone here back again so we can talk about what's going on as a collaboration between the school district and the police department and the city, for how we're continuing to address these issues and what sorts of activities are going to be taking place going forward. Mark?
Yeah, I think that's great, and maybe if you're willing, like there's people on this commission who bring lived experience and perspectives which may not be uniformly shared, but might be actually helpful to get the discussion going. So we can have this once or twice a year, like in this way, or we can try and find ways to engage in a different environment and just have that discussion and point at people like, this is what we're talking about. That's why this is unsafe. Particularly for those people who just, as I said, grew up in a car-normative society that just, to no fault of anybody here, just have never been asked to look at the transportation and environment around them a little differently. And I think we can move a little quicker if we're willing to engage in that dialogue, except in addition to making this an ongoing conversation, as it's central to how the city goes. is to move forward with transportation. So I think a number of us are very willing to help move that conversation forward.
If I may, something that came up just a couple months ago through some OTS information. All the things that we're talking about tonight, specifically around schools and improving different modes of transportation within the city, were addressed at a national conference that this year was held in Long Beach called Lifesavers. And I put it forward to Jennifer and Ryan that the city and perhaps some of the commissioners should attend this every year. Next year's in Baltimore. The amount of idea sharing and discourse that you can generate from that conference is very insightful, and a lot of it is specific to pedestrian and bicycle safety, improving mass transit, bus routes, and messaging. And it was very insightful for the officers who went, but I think it would be even more so to include sheriff people and other city staff. So if I could just put that on your radar for moving forward, I think it would behoove the city as a whole to have that resource and have people attend it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think the more education all of us can get on this and more perspectives is important, and the staff could keep us informed of, you know, what the timelines on that are, when it's coming up, and what we would need to do to send a representative. That would be great.
Can I just add one more thing, just as we hold a tension between really wanting to encourage our students to walk, bike to school. We certainly value that and the opportunity that exists here in Davis. I don't live in Davis, right, so that's something very unique, or it's not accessible everywhere. And 1 out of every 8 of our students does not live in Davis. My watch would like to emphasize that. So we also don't want to or there's almost a privilege that happens with the bicycle conversation, when sometimes we think there's a privilege happening with someone who owns a vehicle, right? So both are true, and we always want to strike a balance and not othering some of our other families. And we'll do it, but I just wanted to make sure you all knew that we have, you know, a lot of families that have to drive into the campus.
So to that point, I think that's a very important point. I fully agree with that. The more kids we encourage to bike to school, we have a reasonable way of doing so. It makes the experience for every parent or every guardian, for every kid better. Also the ones who, for whatever reason, drive their kids to school, whether it's because they don't live in the district or doesn't matter, no questions asked. I guess this discussion should come with maybe a policy goal that I don't think we have. Like, we have 60 to 70% of most school sites of kids who live in that assigned neighborhood school. Like, that should be the goal, that 60 to 70% of kids at each primary school site should be biking or walking to school. And if you do that, all these traffic problems that we talk about will disappear. Right now, I think we don't have good data. We've collected some data. I bet you it's not more than 50, 20% of most school sites. And if we can get that up to 40, 50%, a lot of the issues that we're talking about today will go away. And that to the benefit of everybody, including people who drive their children with a car, whether it's from within Davis or from long distance. So your point is well taken. I think that's the answer to that investment in making more people bike or take transit or walk benefits everybody.
Okay, with that, I mean, we'll try and, you know, I'd like to schedule this to come back again to the commission so we can, you know, continue to address this issue. With that, I think let's move on to our next item. We have 2 more items here this evening and need to get through. The next one is the Moving Transportation Forward Plan. And thank you, Officer Renger, and thank you, Kara, for being here this evening and being part of this. We really appreciate it. So with that, we'll move on to the Moving Transportation Forward Plan. Right?
Okay. Yeah, so Jennifer and myself are going to get a trade-off on this one since we kind of tag team running it. But we have the Moving Transportation Forward Plan And there we go. So this is really a plan that kind of outlines what our goals and objectives are over the next 5-6 years. And really the objective is to support council goals, CAP, and the general plan, and how we are going to manage transportation in the city. Really trying to provide a list of tools and opportunities and options for us as we move forward and we deal with what honestly is going to be some quite transformative change across transportation, not only in Davis, but across the United States over the next 50 years, and trying to set us up for that. But the big question is, how are we going to pay for this? And the answer is, I don't know. I'm going to need a lot of grant funding to do a lot of these larger kind of studies and designs and re-engineering of a lot of these routes. We're also going to have to get scrappy. I'm going to be looking for opportunities, possibly even have you guys form subcommittees to help us kind of grind through some of this and try to set us up for what we want to do. And then I was just going to go through each one of these chapters and kind of give you a few highlights.
All right, so how we divided the plan is what we've recently completed, what's in progress, and what we're working on in the future. So we have some examples here. So the first slide is transportation planning. This is thinking about planning documents and what kinds of plans that we need to have in place for the future with, not only with traffic engineering, but also with active transportation and with just corridor planning. So some of the things we've done, we've completed the local road safety plan, which I mentioned today, and that's a plan that will also need to be updated every 5 to 10 years so we can have new data coming in, so we better understand transportation trends with collisions. I'm working on the short-range transit plan right now. It's a 10-year plan that looks at both Unitrans and Davis Community Transit, looking at routes. We heard tonight that the P line, the Q line, the T line has all these issues with on-time service. This is looking at new routes for the P and Q line, creating additional lines. In fact, we're going to be bringing a survey this fall, which brings, at the same time, Yellow Bus is doing their survey, which looks at new routes for Unitrans service. So you'll be seeing that in the fall. We applied for a grant, right, a active transportation plan, thinking about how our old bicycle action plan really focused on human-powered bicycles, and now we're thinking more holistically about scooters, about new e-devices that we're seeing using our bike lanes and our pathways, and how we mix that with our walking and biking, our young children, our seniors, how we all mix together and how we allocate space for everyone, so we encourage and make it safe for all. And then Ryan's going to take the ITS master plan.
So in this case, ITS is Intelligent Transportation Studies, or Systems, sorry. And really most people understand it as smart signals. This is really trying to look at technology and the assets available and how we are going to use them. But more importantly, how we're going to wire everything to talk to us, that needs to talk to us, and make that work. A lot of the stuff that John was talking about with regards to some of the cameras and the detection and the need for that really would fall under this ITS umbrella. If the city has a desire, and I think we should, to modify the traffic signal operation so that the buses get served first or get long greens at the end of the cycle to help deal with those on-time arrival issues, those are really things that really would be part of this plan. And there's also a potential that this plan would have to be expanded to include some PD or some IS resources and really talk about it as an entire smart city concept.
And these are just examples that we have in the plan. We have way more plans that are actually in the document. We just pulled out a few to share.
I've been keeping you here till 10 and we went through the plan. The next chapter we've got really talks about capital improvements, and these are the large multi-year engineering projects. 14th Street, which you saw recently, is one that we're hoping to start construction on this summer. It's probably going to be over 2 summers to get that work done. The Cool Pavement Demonstration Project, or the PROTECT Grant, is another one where we were able to secure funding. And like everything else on this list. It does more than just one or two things. It's more than just cold pavements. It's pavement rehabilitation, it's preserving the assets we have. It's restriping these roads to include buffered bike lanes, and wherever we can, actually put in some sort of delineators and raised features to protect them. Cal Boulevard Complete Streets is going to include a cycle track, and that's one that we should be getting our first round of funding later this week for it from the CTC for approval, and then we'll start project development and some environmental planning, and you'll be seeing it probably closer to the end of the year. And I've got it here as a 5-year CIP. One of the great struggles of CIP means both capital improvement project and capital improvement program in this case. And this is really something you guys have asked for in the past. You want to see what projects we're working on, but this is more than that. This is what we think we're going to do over the next 5 years. What is funded? What do we think we have funding for? What is still looking for money? And really coming into more depth and detail about that. It's something that I'm really hoping to get working on later this summer and get something in front of you, at least as a draft in the winter next year.
Brian, a good example of that is when we were working on Birch Lane, when we were doing our audit of that school, we know that we need to have a big project on Baywood. We need to move ramps, we need to move storm drains, we need to put in a lot more of crosswalks and striping. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. It's not a quick build at all. That's the kind of project that we would then put in this capital improvement project.
Thank you. Traffic operations. This is really working with our maintenance and facilities folks and kind of dealing with the day-to-day operation. This includes everything from retiming the signals, which we're probably about a third of the way through an effort to make sure everything's updated to the current standards, kind of talking like I was about Covell and Birch. The downtown daylighting plan that was just completed, where we actually went out there and implemented the state law and made sure that all of our intersections downtown had adequate visibility for pedestrians. We've gotten a lot of requests for enhancements to crosswalks. We probably have 20 or so that we need to come up with a way to evaluate and come up with funding to do them. We got about $100,000 to do 3 of them through HSIP that we talked about a few months ago, but really trying to identify and prioritize that, working collaboratively with you all, and then probably going one step further and identifying locations that we haven't received calls about, and try to be a little more proactive on that. I touched on it briefly, but we're working on a quick build program and a quick build toolbox. This is using low-cost tools to implement demonstration projects like we're looking at for 5th at IJK. If the projects work and we're good, then we can move forward with more formal designs as we need to. Or if we need to make modifications, it's a quick way to make sure that we can do that.
We're also going to be bringing a quick build project to the Russell corridor for the Russell Arlington area. So if you come to our community meeting next Monday, you can see it there.
And you'll see that before we implement anything. And then I feel like every conversation we have ends up with discussing the need for data, or the lack thereof, which is true. We need data, we need collision data. I need data not just on automobiles, but bike and ped use. We need data on how people are moving through the trip data, stuff that we used to get from the Census Long Form that somewhat picked up by the American Community Survey. We need, oddly enough, I think my best data source right now is Unitrans. They have good data for on-time arrivals. They're required to collect that data. They're required to collect boarding data. They know how many people they're serving, and they are able to share that with us. But I really want that level of data, and I want it to be on the website and available for everyone to look at. And then the next one I wanted to have was just kind of ongoing maintenance activities. And I think the big one for this is the pavement management plan. We got a plan looking at how or what we need to repave to meet the city's pavement standards and goals. Not just streets, but trails and bike paths and everything as well over the next 10 years, and what our deferred maintenance is there. But we also put together a plan for striping annually, which we touched bases on a little bit earlier. We're working on the bicycle and pedestrian wayfinding signs. Once that's installed, we're going to need a plan to continue to go out there and maintain them. We're probably replacing every single one of those signs every 5 to 7 years.
All right, so the final thing is active transportation and safe routes to school programs and projects. This is everything that those two programs do. So some examples of that, we have our annual crossing guard program. The city administers the crossing guard program. We hire a consultant to actually, or a contractor actually provide the crossing guards out of the locations. But internally, what staff does is when there's an issue with the crossing guard or a request for crossing guards, that falls on us to respond to those things. We do annual events through our program. We finished Loopalooza earlier this month. We have the bike scavenger hunt coming up. I'm going to be at Celebrate Davis, where we're going to be doing the bike ballet. So every year we have like activities that we do annually for the program. The Lights in a Pinch vending machine, which you have right out front here, where people can get a free bike light who come to the commission or council. So we have these programs that are ongoing, and the plan is for, in the future, we want better education in the schools. We want to bring back a bike party. We want to just really have that better connection with UC Davis and their educational program. So there's a lot of growth in this area that I see in the future for our programs and projects.
So really, kind of want to stress that this plan really builds on the success of Davis. A lot of things, including everything that we were talking about in the previous slide, are unique to Davis. Nowhere else have I worked where we're doing things like this. And really trying to use this as a bridge to move forward, identify new projects. I also need a lot of these plans and a lot of these studies and a lot of this legwork to include a lot of community outreach and set us up for future grant opportunities so we can continue to build on the successes and build the network that we were just talking about that everyone wants. So staff's recommendation is have you guys review the plan, provide us some feedback, anything you want to add or change. I do have a note here that you might want to discuss a quick build toolkit or a toolkit for school safety as something to add to the plan. And then we would intend to take it to the city council probably in July.
Great, thank you very much, Ryan. At this point, do we have any clarifying questions from commissioners? If there's no clarifying questions, open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
We have so many comments now. So one thing we have taken up within Bike Davis recently is the lighting around pathways and streets in Davis. We had one of our board members feels that it's very dark in Davis, and I know lighting is kind of a sore topic in Davis. I was here, I remember. But I didn't see anything in this moving forward plan about maintaining lighting, improving lighting, addressing lighting. We have commissioned a group at ITS to collect some data for us, which we will happily share. And we also would like to just say that we're available to do some of the work that needs to if you want me to help with any of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? If there's no other public comment, open it up for discussion by commissioners. Is there any discussion on?
Sure. On the staff report, Ryan knows that I can't help myself. On page 7 of the staff report, but page 5 of the embedded report on the staff report, it shows the collision incidences between 2009 and 2019. I don't know if you're able to pull that up for the benefit of. Yep, perfect. Yeah, so, and I understand when reaching out for grants, it's important to have something that's interesting and unique. reaching out for grants. But I just will notice that the Russell and Arlington roundabout, the number of collisions there is relatively few as compared to, say, Russell and Oak, for instance. Right? We're talking about 5 versus 47. And just moving forward, I think this data is helpful as a backdrop in terms of how we prioritize some areas. And so it's not a complaint about Russell and Arlington. It's just an observation that going forward, since we've been provided this information, it might help us zero in on where some problematic areas are. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an engineering solution, perhaps it could be an alternate route solution. So I'm looking at on the far right where there's 37. You know, I'm guessing that's Mace and 2nd Street. I'm not zooming in, but it's like, what's going on there exactly? And maybe not. But related to that is you talked about Unitrans providing some good data. I'm wondering whether the spin, scooters and e-bikes, whether we're having access to that information to get a sense of where people, origin, destination, where people are going on campus. You know, one of the things, which is sort of a mystery, is where people go to on campus. I mean, some of you UCD alums will probably know exactly, could probably just give me within 2 to 3% like where the main destinations are. But that would be interesting to better understand how we create, just like safe routes to school, safe routes to places that people go to. And so, I am a little bit of a broken record on this, but for those who haven't been on a commission with me, one of the things that always horrifies me, and Jennifer knows this, is when we see people from South Davis riding over the Richards-Over crossing of 80, when just a block or so to the west is the undercrossing that goes by the Arboretum and pops you out at Davis Commons, right? But you see these people go over, and it's just such a challenging little section to navigate. I mean, there is no great way, even as an experienced cyclist. And, so I guess the point being is we don't necessarily have to fix every spot, but if we know that people are going on a certain pathway and we know that there's a much better pathway for them to take, maybe it's just helping them know that there's that better pathway. Anyway, so I'll kind of shut up, but you get the idea. I mean, a lot of these are probably pretty interesting to look at to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, so about the spin data, we do have live spin data and spin trend data where we can see the preferred routes that spin users are taking. In fact, as a part of our proposal for the active transportation grant, we want to better understand and use that data to help direct, movement and where pathways and streets might need to be a little bit wider to accommodate all the different speeds of active devices. So it's a very important data set for us to use and have.
Thank you.
In regards to the intersections here, we did partner with the university on the Safe Streets for All grant that would have touched on the signals on the Russell corridor from Sycamore all the way to like 5th and B. And it would have been a lot of moderate cost improvements, removing poles from the medians, that 2-inch yellow stripe they put around the back plates, upgrading some signal heads, visibility, fixing some generalization issues. It was about $8 million worth of work. Unfortunately, that wasn't funded. But we are looking at grant types like that kind of really lean into a combination of what we need or what we feel we need on these corridors, especially on the bike and ped safety side, and then what the grants want to fund, which tend to be a little more automobile focused in a lot of cases, to come up with these successful projects.
Mark? Thank you, Ryan. A couple of, take questions. You can tell me whether or not they belong on this plan, yes or no. One of them has to do with traffic lights and how well they work for cyclists. Oftentimes, cyclists are left to have to wait while on their left and their right stay in front of a light, while on the left and the right there's cars moving. Sometimes, and the 113 crossing at Russell comes to mind, that light for cyclists doesn't automatically go green when clearly when cars go green. So there's opportunities here that are no or low cost to make the flow through for the types of mobility that we want to encourage easier at little to no cost. Except for you have to work with Caltrans to manage that, I understand that. But that's not the only example. Is this plan also going to try and address signal timing and prioritizing, and to the extent possible, the types of mobility that would say we want to encourage?
So yeah, it's really trying to address that through a couple different things. Right now, we're reevaluating timing, make sure there's adequate time for pedestrians to get across the street, bicyclists to get across the street. That's very low cost. That's staff time for staff that already work for us. I've got a couple people that have been helping me get through that as quickly as possible. As far as some of the other stuff where I need to add or modify detection because bicycle detection isn't great, or we're still dealing with a button you've got to push, that's going to be part of the ITS master plan. That's part of the recurring maintenance. Davis has been good at using video technology in those locations, which does a much better job of picking up bicyclists than everything else that we have access to at the moment. So it's just a process of getting that up and running. To retrofit an intersection for video, it's probably a $40,000 or $50,000 cost. And we probably still have 20, 25 intersections that need to be addressed.
Sure, it's understood that those are all done at once, but I think it's good to hear that's the direction that we're going. And then one on data. I am a scientist, and I think data is always great. And I actually asked Jennifer the question, what is our mode share data? And it sounds like we don't have the best option of mode share. The campus has some data. And that just brings me to the question that the campus has their data on campus originated or ending trips. And the city has theirs, and this comes back in the climate action adaptation plan, where we're kind of artificially treating the two portions of the city as these two separate things. And I understand that that is in part required because they are two separate entities, but I think when it comes to assessing transportation as a whole, it would be very helpful if we have the data for one entity that is Davis Campus plus City. So as we're getting data, will we be able to treat it as the single unit that it de facto is?
Yes, we will. My approach on data, like I said, is I want to share it. I get data from the campus, I put it up on the website. I got data from the Palomino project when they did a lot of collection along Covell, put it up on the website. That needs to be available not just for us, but for everyone else. And I need a database, right? I need to be, in 10 years, be able to say, we have been investing in this strategy. Is it working? Have we seen that mode shift? And it's not going to be, well, 1 or 2 years of data. It's going to take a bench to see what's going on, which means we're building it now. We got some data, but for automobile volumes, but we really couldn't count about 2016, so we got a gap, and we're starting to ramp that back up again. I also think there's opportunities to look at big data and some of these like Streetlight or other data vendors or data banks to see if there's anything there we can use. I'm skeptical. I've had mixed luck with them in the past. They've done very bad at identifying the difference between a car and a pedestrian. And if they're better and we can use it, that's awesome. But sometimes the data's not great and we're just using what we've got, but that's why we need the bank. We need better data and we need to share.
I learned last week that YOLO TD is going to be doing a county-wide travel survey this coming fall. So they're going to be sending out something and asking people where they live, where they work, where they're going, and then we'll have a county-wide data set that'll help impact our decision-making. So I'm excited about that.
Any other commissioner comments? So, I guess that we need to make a motion about recommending approval to the council. And is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I would like us to include, as we discussed, a school safety toolkit. I'm assuming that would go under traffic operations, future project needs.
Yes.
Okay. And that would be my recommendation in the motion, would be that we do include that so that can be incorporated into.
I'll make a motion to approve this, including your suggested toolkit.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there is no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, thank you all very much. We'll move on to the next item on here, which is to appoint a member to chair of the June commission meeting and check for quorum. This is my fault. I will be out of town in June during our scheduled meeting time, and we need to appoint someone to chair that because I think
Andy's,
Andy will be
yeah.
in San Diego.
Well, yeah.
Or will you still be here?
No, I'll be, this is my last meeting, so I hope I won't be at next month's meeting.
Yeah, so that leaves Mark, Brett, or Skylar, and you're gonna be at the, and we also wanna do a quorum check because there's, oh,
We're not looking
I'm
good.
not gonna be there, Jim.
you're not gonna be in June, so I don't even know if we have a quorum.
I
We
was
don't.
planning on being there. June is my last meeting.
Yeah, then we don't have a quorum
Well, we've
because,
got Nick, so we still have a quorum.
but,
I won't be here.
no.
Mark said he won't be
Andy
here.
won't.
Andy won't be
We don't
here.
have a quorum.
Never mind, we don't have a quorum.
What about the 16th? Would that, June 16th?
Well, that would be a special meeting.
There would be a special meeting. The big item on that agenda is supposed to be village farms. So we'll probably need a special meeting.
Okay, with the 16th or 20th, so for the people who couldn't make it, or actually for all of us here, so Andy, for the people who would like to attend the June meeting, who are able to, would the 16th or 23rd work?
Personally, the 23rd would probably work. The 16th is iffy.
Mark, 23rd?
I'm gonna be traveling.
Okay,
Long time.
Skylar?
Let me check my calendar.
We're,
I could do the 23rd.
I can do the 23rd.
I am gonna have to coordinate schedules for this room and with the planning department and the applicant.
How about, does the 30th work as well for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
So if we gave 2 different Mondays, then maybe one of them would work for Ryan as he checks availability.
I'd say the 30th is running up against our following meeting.
We have a recess in July.
Oh, we do. I apologize. Yes, you're correct.
So Ryan, just for workflow here, I mean, Village Farms is a big discussion item, and what is the harm in pushing this to August? Like, for your timeline, I know that will all of your colleagues, not only.
Just I will not be available the 16th or the 30th.
But the 23rd works.
That's what I need to double check is the schedule with the project planner on this one. The issue is when does it need to be approved by the city council in order to make a ballot in, I think it's June of 29 now.
Yeah, so we
Or
have still
26.
more than a year, so the question is would a later in the summer, agendizing of the item getting your timeline as well? It sounds like we still have some time.
We should have some time. Like I said, I gotta discuss it with them and figure out what that does to the project schedule.
Just out of curiosity, Mark, when are you back?
Late July.
And just to let you guys know, we will most likely get new commissioners starting in August.
Yes.
There was one item that we wanted, sorry, I'm gonna skip to the task calendar so we can look at it. So the other item that we have to do we have to do it before July 1st is the Unitrans program of projects. So we're gonna we're gonna need to get that meeting in June.
So it sounds like though if we were to do the 23rd, Skylar, you could still come?
I think let me look again. The 23rd, yes.
Yeah, I can make it.
Okay, I could make it the 23rd, and if we had Nick, that gives us a quorum.
Yeah. And, you know, we could just meet in the parking lot at the picnic benches. You know,
Yeah, we'll just bring out the owl, it'll be fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you see the UCA students, you know, occasionally in the spring, they have their classes outdoors, it all works. You know, the Brown Act doesn't require a meeting to be indoors.
Can we tentatively say the 23rd, and then you'll check availability and make sure that Nick is available, and then we can confirm that?
Yeah, we'll aim for the 23rd, we'll try to make that happen.
Okay. And then if it is the 23rd, then obviously I'll be here, so then the question of who chairs is moved.
So then will we now be scheduling a special meeting?
Then we schedule a special meeting, yes.
All right, so let's leave that there then. I guess with that, let's move on to the, our task calendar.
I guess it's me.
Can you provide an overview of our task
Yeah, no
calendar?
problem. So in June, as we have been discussing, we were gonna talk about Village Farms traffic study and then also the Unitrans program of projects, which needs to be approved before the beginning of the fiscal year. In August, we will be getting new commissioners. We'll do an election of chair and vice chair with new commissioner introductions, some training on commission-initiated tasks is a good starting off point for the new commissioners. And then also the Unitrans and DCT safety plan, which is a biannual requirement for each of those agencies. And then September, we're gonna figure out what's coming, but because we're going to be doing that fall outreach for the short-range transit plan, we're gonna be bringing an update about the plan to you all in October. And that's it. And then we have our potential items at the bottom.
Great, thank you very much. With that, well, is there any commission discussion on the task calendar?
Maybe a clarifying question, what the process was for the general plan update, where each commission was.
Thank you for asking that question, that occurred to me earlier. as well.
Yeah, so I heard back from the planning staff, and they have not developed an official process for appointing or selecting members of the commission to sit on the general plan committee, and that's something that they're working on with city council.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks for the question on that. Any other commissioner discussion on the task calendar?
Yeah, a couple times it's been mentioned about creation of some subcommittees. It might be nice, maybe not as an agendized item at our next meeting, but maybe just Ryan or Jennifer, if you have some ideas around like what you might like to see. And then, and especially since we're gonna get new commissioners, rather than, you know, say like, oh, we're gonna have a commission on, it'd be nice when the new people, just to get a sense of what their interest is. Maybe Andy Furlow's twin brother will be here, or actually triplets, and there'll be two of them, and they're just like, oh man, we want to work on bus timetables for the T route. And we're like, okay, have at it.
Jim, they all have to be ad hoc committees, is that correct? Are we still?
They would be, I think they've also would be ad hoc. If you wanted to create a standing committee, I'm not sure what you would have to do that the commission doesn't already do as a whole. I can definitely get something together. It'll probably be on the August meeting with the new commissioners after I get the moving transportation forward plan to the council, and then we come up with a plan on how we're gonna try to tackle some of these items.
Okay. If there's no more discussion on our task calendar, then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you all for the discussion this evening. It was great. Appreciate all your insight.